bet you my mama gonna call me.
How can two people have completely different accounts of every sexual encounter?
Stop being a victim. I'm not. You are not.
It might have happened, but I don't remember.
So how you know I was lying?
We're tagging people in a sonogram now?
He put in a lot of work.
I've been all over this country.
I made him send it because I didn't have sex with her.
I was not there.
You got in the game.
If you gonna be our daddy, be our daddy 24/7.
Mr. Lee's mom had all her hopes tied to the results of this paternity case. It was either her wishes came true in the courtroom or she went there to have the worst day of her life. Apparently there was a baby on the line, and Mr. Lee's mom was definitely not ready to believe the baby belonged to her son. Miss Longshore, on the other hand, was full throttle on the fact that Mr. Lee was the father of her kid.
Miss Johnson, you have brought your teenage son to court to get the results of a paternity test to prove that he is not the father of the defendant's son, Hayden. Ms. Longshore, you state that you are positive Mr. Lee is your son's father, even though he claims to have been a virgin before you met and that he slept with you only one time.
Miss Johnson, who happened to be Mr. Lee's mother, started by talking about how she uncovered the deeds that were happening behind her back. Not just behind her back, but under her roof. She got a text from Miss Longshore explaining that she had a sexual relationship with her son and that he could most likely be the father of her child. Well, so she thought, at least.
Understood that I would be angry, and she had informed me that they had sexual relations at my home when I was at work.
And then she also obviously indicated that she thought your son was the father.
Initially, she thought somebody else was.
Okay.
No.
Well, that's what you told me, and I have the
It
Facebook
was-
message right here.
It was between, I
Jerome,
didn't
will you
think.
please hand me?
Miss Johnson sure had a firm grip on her son. It was finally time to tell his side of the story and how things really played out. His story was the complete opposite of what Miss Longshore claimed to have happened. It was now a question of who was really telling the truth. Now, that's not even the mind-blowing revelation because it gets even spicier. Mr. Lee says she told him she was pregnant, but wasn't sure if he was the father. These stories just don't check out.
Well, I talked to her on Facebook, like we had a conversation on Facebook, and at first she was telling me like, oh, I'm pregnant, but I don't think you're the father. I had sex with other guys, it shouldn't even be you. And then afterwards, after the baby was born, she was like, oh, don't worry, it don't look like you, you're not the father. So I wasn't even worried.
I never said that. I told you plenty of times Kaden looks just like you. Why are you lying in court?
No, you
Please
never
stop.
said that.
Please
In the
stop.
Apparently, these two had been fooling around since high school. Miss Longshore claimed she was just with him for the sexual aspect of the relationship. Mr. Lee, on the other hand, believed Miss Longshore's intentions were never for them to get into a serious relationship. Well, at least they both agree on one thing. It was never meant to be a serious relationship.
We went to the same high school.
Okay.
We were never together. It was a friendship type
It was
thing,
a
and we ended
one-night
up having sex
fling
one
type
day, and I got pregnant.
With
We
a
were
house
never
full of people,
together.
Judge.
We weren't.
And it wasn't like we ended up having sex. She was coming after this. It's not
You got
at all.
Oh, I was coming after that.
That-
wow.
She was
That
checking
is
on
what
me.
he-
It wasn't
Wow. I was
Okay.
coming after that. That's crazy.
Well, if this
See.
baby ends up being yours, it's gonna be checking on you too.
Miss Johnson was upset. She was really upset. She felt the baby coming into her son's life would ruin his plans for a bright future. She didn't want him to go through so many headaches before he made something of himself. Well, newsflash, Miss Johnson, your son was the one who got into a sexual relationship. It sure seems like he wasn't thinking about his future.
I'll do it because I want him to finish college. I want him to go. I want him to achieve his dreams. I never got to achieve mine, okay? And I want that for him. He's age when I had my first kid. So it's not that I don't understand the struggle, but I know you gotta work at it. Ain't nobody just gonna give you nothing. There's no reason for me to just accept a child when he was 5 months old when I got the Facebook.
Now, in Mr. Lee's defense, he said he knew nothing about the baby. One moment she was fine and okay, and the next moment she texted him out of the blue and said she was pregnant. Well, at least that's how he put it. Miss Longshore had something totally different to say. She tried reaching out to Mr. Lee several times to talk about the baby, but he turned into a ghost. She couldn't get a hold of him anywhere.
Like we never even saw her pregnant. We never saw pictures of her pregnant. It was like
Plenty
just a
of
baby out of
pictures on
nowhere.
Facebook.
What?
Pregnant. You were tagged in my sonogram before you deleted me. What are you talking about?
Who?
Never added me.
Beyonce was.
You never added me.
Yes, I
We're
say
tagging people in a sonogram now?
Judge,
I've
please,
never
can I
seen a
say
sonogram.
something? Judge, please, Judge.
I want to understand. You tag his name in the sonogram. That's what you did?
I tagged his Facebook and
Miss Johnson proceeds to detail how much she suffered while she was growing up. Things weren't easy, all right. She went through so much to get to where she is today, and that's all she was trying to do for her baby boy. With the way she spoke, you could tell she was definitely not going to allow anything to ruin her son's life, even if it was a baby, or should I say most importantly, if the baby was not his.
Miss Johnson, you said you were homeless.
Yes.
Yes.
What was your childhood like growing up?
My mother had some substance abuse issues, but she's made great strides to improve and change her life. So I know it can be done. Thank you.
With her mother as an addict, like she raised her siblings, she raised all her brothers, and I was raised up with them.
So you know your mother's a very strong woman.
Yes, I do, Your Honor. I know
And-
she'll do whatever it takes just to get us fed.
Today, all this talk about Miss Johnson wanting the best for her son was getting on Miss Longshore's nerves. She got angry in almost no time, and she decided to air out how she was feeling. She started by accusing both Mr. Lee and his mom of making her look like a bad person. I mean, they both had a sexual relationship, so why are they making it look like she was the only one who was interested in the relationship?
Like, what are you making it seem like this is just
Look,
me or
there
something?
wasn't
Like,
no game on.
how is it
You
just
know-
my fault? How is it just my fault? You had sex with me too. I didn't have sex with myself. Like, come on now, get it together. Why didn't you think smart enough
When
to
you're
put a
gonna come
condom
over
on?
every day
I don't
and
walk
just
around
throw
with
it at me,
condoms.
I can't say no forever.
No,
If
he
you're
had-
gonna come over every day and just throw it at
I
me,
didn't
like,
come
oh,
to
you
your
want
house
some?
every day, so stop lying. Stop trying to make me seem like I'm a hoe.
Now Mr. Lee has a new perspective on his story. Talk about someone playing the victim. He claimed Miss Longshore seduced him into having a sexual relationship. He even claimed he was still a virgin when she started to make sexual moves towards him.
Yep,
Like,
set you
I
up.
never met any of her family. I never went to her house. I didn't even know where she stayed
You
at
haven't met any of
until
my
she came
family?
over.
You haven't met none of my family? You didn't meet my brother who went to the same
Miss
school as us?
Longshore,
I was
let me ask you
married.
this,
Come
Miss
on now, get
Longshore.
it together.
So you two weren't even dating. You were saying you were just friends.
Yes.
And that's what I thought.
Did you want to be more than a friend?
I did like him, and he needs to stop acting like he didn't like me back, because you was telling everybody at school that you liked me.
The atmosphere was getting too heated for the tantrums that were coming from both sides. The only thing that could smooth the air was the DNA results. Would Miss Johnson's dreams for her son be shattered?
Mr. Lee, it is without question you are Caden's.
I told you! Told you! I ain't got nothing left to say. Told you!
This revelation was one that Miss Jones wasn't expecting to uncover. While she was growing up, she felt mistreated and unwanted by Mr. Jones and his family, only to discover that there is a possibility that she could have another man as a father. The revelation shook the walls of Miss Jones's heart and left her with so much confusion. Mr. Jones, on the other hand, believes that he is so sure he cannot be her biological father. He wasn't just certain, he claimed he could prove it.
Jones, you say that growing up, you felt unwanted by the defendant, Jerome Jones, and his family.
Yes, Your Honor.
Then 4 months ago, you learned that he and another man could possibly be your father.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Jones, you argue that you're 100% positive that you're not her biological father.
Yes, Your Honor.
You say you can prove it.
The words she used to describe her life while growing up were unwanted, neglected, and invisible. Mr. Jones, who was meant to be her father figure, was almost never present in her life. She couldn't even remember spending any quality time with Mr. Jones, which then begs the question, was he really her father? I mean, dads are meant to love their kids, but Mr. Jones wasn't doing a great job at that.
Your Honor, I felt unwanted and lonely and invisible.
Wow. Take me there. What was it like for you as a little girl?
He was in and out my life, barely saw him.
But you knew him to be your father.
Yes,
But you barely saw him?
yes,
Was in and out your life.
yes, Your Honor.
Do you remember quality time you spent with him?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Jones was so certain that she was not his child. He claimed to be present in Miss Jones's life, but was quite certain he wasn't her biological father. On several occasions, he had fights with her mother about the paternity of Miss Jones, but her mother was very insistent on the fact that she knew he was the father. He even said her mom was the one who didn't want to get the DNA test done to determine who the real father was.
But we had it set up once before where when she was a little girl, that she could have had, we went up to have a test done when she was little.
Yeah, but my mom told me that you said you didn't have the money for it.
No, that's not true. At first I didn't, but I went to the hospital and I got there. And Terry knows that Ms. Brittingham knew that when we got to the hospital, I was there to get this test done then.
To determine who the real father was. The conversation about the use of protection while in a sexual relationship comes up, and Mr. Jones and Miss Jones's mother get into a brawl. They start arguing and yelling at each other, saying, "You used protection." "No, you didn't use protection." "No, you have never used protection." There was no going forward with these two because they just couldn't agree on anything.
You do admit you had a relationship with Ms. Jones' mom.
Yes. But
So why so much doubt? You say you're 100%.
well, first, Your Honor, when I was with her, I was always protected, and I made sure of that. And then when She says it must have burst my protection, which I knew it did not. And
When
you know
did you use protection? I'm sorry, Your Honor, but when did you use protection? I don't remember you
yes,
using
I
no
did, Chair,
protection.
and you knew I did.
The stories were starting to sound very confusing in the courtroom. Mr. Jones had apparently been paying for child support all these years. His name was even written and signed on Miss Jones's birth certificate. I mean, it couldn't have been forged. If he paid for child support through the years and his name happens to be on her birth certificate, why then is he saying he is 100% positive the child does not belong to him?
If this was the case, if I'm to be her father, which I paid for her for all the many years.
So you've been paying child support all these years?
Yes, I have, Your Honor.
Are
Yes,
you
I
on the
have.
birth certificate?
Yes, Your Honor, he is on the birth certificate. I have a copy right here if you'd like to see that.
And you know-
Jerome, please hand me that evidence. So take me back a little bit, Miss Brittingham. So you were still in a relationship with Mr. Jones?
Yes.
No, Your Honor, that's not correct. That is not correct.
The genesis of this paternity crisis was that Mr. Jones felt Miss Jones's mother was not honest with him when she gave birth to the child. He claimed that when she was asked who the father of the child was, she initially hesitated and then went on to call his name. Has Miss Jones's mother been seeing other men? I mean, if he is the biological father of the child, why not boldly say his name and be done with it?
Well, what happened is, then all of a sudden she hesitated, and then she said Jerome Jones.
What you felt like all these years was that she wasn't completely honest during that time.
Exactly.
And you've paid support all these years.
Yes, I have.
You have evidence that
Yes,
you brought?
I do. It's right here, Your Honor.
Jerome, please hand me the evidence.
And it's 2 years on here. It's 2 years missing. That's not there.
This is where things start to get out of hand. Mr. Jones presented his evidence, showing how involved he had been in Miss Jones's life. Apparently, Mr. Jones had paid over $50,000 in child support. Now that's a lot of money going into child support for a child you claim not to be yours. No one in their right senses would want to pay that amount of money without knowing if the child was really theirs.
You're saying you've paid close to $50,000 in child support
Pretty close.
for a child that you 100% believe is not yours.
Absolutely. I'm sorry she has to go through this today because I still love her just like she is my child.
No.
And as
So
far as her,
wait.
and
I
as
don't
far as her
really
not,
feel like
and
that.
as far as
I don't
as
feel
far
like
as her
that
not
at all.
coming to my house, that was her.
Mr. Jones' story started to have some serious twists and turns. Miss Jones was tired of hearing him speak, so she decided to open up once again. Apparently, Mr. Jones didn't tell anyone she was his daughter. Whenever they went to gatherings, people would often ask who Miss Jones was because Mr. Jones never mentioned he had a daughter. It was only there, and then Mr. Jones would reveal that she was his daughter. Like I said, something smells fishy with his story.
Who's this? And you said, it's my daughter. I was like, oh, I didn't know you had a daughter.
You told me that?
No, you said that to them.
No, that's not true.
No, what was
No.
said was they would say they didn't know he had a daughter.
Yeah.
And you would say that this was your daughter, and they say, oh, I didn't know you had a daughter.
Why would I say that?
Mr. Jones and Miss Jones's mother got into another heated argument. It was now time to play the blame and deny game. Miss Jones kept emphasizing the fact that Mr. Jones denied the baby several times. He never wanted anything to do with the baby. Mr. Jones, on the other hand, called her a liar. He said it was her fault he wasn't involved in her life when she wasn't completely honest with him.
He would always tell me, she's not mine, she's not mine. And I told him, I said, one day you're gonna need somebody and she's gonna be the one you're gonna have to turn to. And you were on your job. She was 7 years old. I went to your job just to take her by so she could see her daddy. He was never there. I mean, if you really felt like that, you could have came up with the money and had that DNA test done.
It didn't look like Mr. Jones and Miss Jones's mom were ever going to come to an agreement. The only saving grace here was the DNA test, and the judge was ready to give the final verdict.
Mr. Jones, you are not Lakeisha's father.
And that's fine. So now you know. Come here, baby. So now you know. That's all right, because you'll always be my baby.
It was very hard to tell if Miss Spruill and Mr. Dixon had a beautiful relationship or if it was just a friends with benefit kind of thing. Miss Spruill was furious that she had to come to court to prove that Mr. Dixon was the father of her 13-month-old child when she knew for a fact that there was no other person who could be tagged as the father of the child. Mr. Dixon, on the other hand, believed he was not the father of her child. He claimed it was a purely sexual relationship with no strings attached, so he was certain the child wasn't his.
Miss Spruill, you are furious that you had to file a paternity case against the defendant, Mr. Dixon, due to his denial of your daughter, Skya. You say you know the exact night you conceived, and he is her father.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Dixon, you claim that your relationship with Miss Spruill was purely sexual, and one
one conversation that occurred is the only proof that her child is not yours. Is that correct?
Mr. Dixon started off by listing and explaining his doubts as to why the child could definitely not be his. He brought in an exhibit to paint a vivid picture of the doubts that had been stored up in his head. He sure wasn't here to joke around because he was ready to fight Miss Sproul to the end. Miss Sproul was also not going to let Mr. Dixon have an easy win. She was as prepared as he was.
We're so excited about our newest family member, Skya. So she goes around showing pictures and, you know, excited about it, showing to our coworkers, her bosses and everything, except for one particular coworker comes out of the blue and was like, whoa, wait a minute, pause. No, that's not his baby, that's my brother's baby. Like, whoa, wait a minute, why would this girl come out of the blue and claim that this is her brother's baby just like that? So I have my doubts that this is my child. And then too, Your Honor, I want to say this too.
She was as prepared as he was. Mr. Dixon had proof to back up his claim. Apparently, Miss Sproul wasn't being a faithful partner during their relationship. He said she had 2 different phones she used for 2 different purposes. The first phone was to post everything about herself on Facebook, and the other phone was to talk to other men who she happened to be intimate with. Well, at least so he claimed.
Maya has 2 phones. She had one phone that she used to be on the internet and she posts her whole entire life on Facebook. She has another phone where she texts and calls. She plays like she's 2 people on Facebook.
He has that
she
number.
He's
not allowed to have my main number. We have no communication because, like I said,
he's not allowed to have your main number, and he's the father of your child.
We're gonna go to why he can't have my main number. Mr. Dixon ran off to Alabama when his daughter was 1 month old.
Now Mr. Dixon had time to defend himself since he claimed he wasn't the father of the child. It was Miss Sproul's turn to speak up, and she had some truths to let out of her chest. Mr. Dixon was not loyal at all. While he claimed to be away for work purposes, he got himself another baby with a different woman.
Mr. Dixon had a whole nother child while he was still with me. He was still with me.
So what was he doing in Alabama?
Making babies. Yeah, he was doing in some work. He put in a lot of work.
Mr. Dixon.
And not only that, once he gets down to Alabama, my daughter was all over his Facebook. Cover photo and all. The same child you've been denying.
How can you claim a baby when the baby first came into the world only to then turn your back and deny its existence? Miss Sproul was furious because when she initially gave birth to the child, Mr. Dixon claimed the child was present from the time of birth. When his other baby mama found out about the child, he stopped showing care and started to deny the baby.
Entire pregnancy. He was. He is the one who told me I was pregnant. He said I was pregnant because he's throwing up everywhere. He said I was pregnant.
Because he was throwing up.
He was throwing up.
Your Honor, let me tell you about that, Your Honor, about that. I had a hangover. We got drunk one night and I had a hangover and I threw up at 5, 6 o'clock that morning.
So why did you call me to find out when I was pregnant?
Hangover.
Why did you call me to find out I was pregnant?
Weeks later, she's the one throwing up.
Before she gave birth to the baby, everyone thought she was lying about being pregnant. Apparently, Mr. Dixon had been selling a different story to those around him. He said that she was faking the pregnancy and was delusional about the whole situation. Finally, Thanksgiving came, and there were no more lies to be told. Everyone found out she was pregnant, and Mr. Dixon had some explaining to do since he was the one who had been spreading the lies.
Everybody found out that I was pregnant. Everybody knew I was pregnant by then. Because at first, they were saying I was lying about being pregnant because Mr. Dixon kept telling them I wasn't, even though he went to the
All
appointment.
she do is lie. You don't know what to
You
believe.
went with me. How did I lie?
You don't know what to believe.
So did you go with me to the appointment? Did you? Was you there when they said I was pregnant?
No, I wasn't there when they
Oh, you wasn't
came
there?
back with the results.
You wasn't
I was at
there?
The house the whole entire time when you
All right, so Thanksgiving, they found out you were pregnant.
Yes.
Mr. Dixon made attempts to be present in the child's life, but Miss Sproul was not very welcoming. He approached her with the idea of wanting to change the baby's name to his, but she didn't agree. She was too upset that he hadn't been around for so long, so she wasn't going to let him put his name on the birth certificate.
A name change is a significant acknowledgement, as well as being willing to execute the birth certificate. Why not be cooperative instead of combative?
Because the day we were supposed to go get it changed, Mr. Dixon ran right back off to Alabama.
lies.
Oh,
We
you
had
did?
plenty of time. I didn't leave.
You
I
were
didn't
there
leave
for
till-
a week. You was there the first week of her life, Mr. Dixon.
I didn't leave back to Alabama till a month later.
He was the one who had been spreading the lies. Mr. Dixon made attempts to be present in the child's life, but Miss Sproul was not very welcoming. He approached her with the idea of wanting to change the baby's name to his, but she didn't agree. She was too upset that he hadn't been around for so long, so she wasn't going to let him put his name on the birth certificate. The courtroom had seen enough of Mr. Dixon and Miss Sproul's drama about who the biological father of the baby was. It was finally time to reveal the truth. Endless argument they both didn't want to stop.
Mr. Dixon, you are the father. You are her father.
Thank you.
You feel relieved, Miss Sproul?
I do.
How do you feel, Mr. Dixon?
I'm excited. I have a beautiful baby girl. I'm gonna be the best father I can, and I'm just glad the truth is out.